Hello, I'm Jason Alder, and welcome to Lesson 2 of Advanced Rhythm through Karnatic Techniques. If you missed Lesson 1 and you're not already familiar with the Karnatic gati system and sulcatu or conical, now would be a good time to go back and watch that, because I'm going to continue using the Karnatic terms and the syllables for counting the gatis. So in Lesson 1 we talked about the gati and the subdivision of the beat. This lesson is going to expand on the gati system through rephrasing, which is called jathi. So in a jathi, we'll take the speed of a gati but rephrase it using the syllables of another gati. So for example, we have chatusra, which is 4 subdivisions of the beat, but we'll phrase it in tisra, which is in 3, but we'll keep the chatusra speed. So in Western terms, we'll take 16th notes, but rather than phrasing it 4 16th notes to the beat, we'll accent every third 16th note. So Raphael Reina, author of the book, and from whom I studied all this material, he calls this chatusra jathi 3. So chatusra is the gati, the speed, and jathi 3 means we're accenting every third. So the Karnatic musicians would call this tisra in chatusra, but I'm going to use Reina's nomenclature. So chatusra jathi 3. I'll just demonstrate that quickly. I'll begin by counting 3 beats in chatusra, takadimi, and then I will switch to jathi 3 and phrase it takida. Takadimi, 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 takida, 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 ta. So as you can see in here, by phrasing in 3s, we say 4 takidas before the cycle lands on a beat again, which is every 3 beats. And that's going to be the case with all of these jathis. The number of beats until the cycle lands on a beat again will be the same as the jathi number, and the number of groupings within the cycle will be the same as the number of matras of the gati. So chatusra jathi 3 means that there will be 4 groupings within the cycle, and that the cycle is 3 beats long. But also really pay attention to where each jathi phrase grouping falls in relation to the gati. So in chatusra jathi 3, the first is on the beat, naturally. The second is 1 matra before beat 2. The third is in the middle of beat 2. And the fourth is 1 matra after beat 3. Likewise, pay attention to which matra of the tisra lands on the beat. So the first matra of the first grouping, the second matra of the second grouping, and the third matra of the third grouping, and the fourth grouping is completely between the beats. But what's really important here is you don't accent the beats. So don't say takida, 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 but rather accent the first matra of each tisra grouping. So takida, 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 ta. So now that I've explained that, I'll just demonstrate it once again. So I'll count 3 in. Takadimi, 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 takida, 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 ta. So now here comes the interesting part. So we have 4 takidas within 3 beats. By only saying the first syllable of each of those groupings, the ta, then we have a 4 against 3 polyrhythmic pattern. So again, it's very important to feel the matra speed throughout. Takadimi, 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 takida, 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 ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, ka, di, mi, ta, ka, di, mi, ta, 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 takida, 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 takida. 1, 2, 3, 4, ta, ka, di, mi, ta. So the first step is to practice all of the gatis with all of the different jatis and really get used to phrasing these over the beats. So I'll try another one now. I'll keep the Chatusha gati speed, but then I'll phrase it in Khanda, so jati 5. And as you'll see, we'll have 4 groupings again that'll realign after 5 beats, so a 4 against 5 pattern. So I'll put my metronome on. I'm accenting the first beat of every measure so that you can hear that more clearly. So this time I'll do 5 takadimis before going into the phrase. Takadimi, 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 takagina ton, 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 ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, ka, di, mi. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, ka, di, mi. Ta, ka, di, mi. Ta. Again, pay attention to the relationship of the matras to the beats. So the first grouping is on the beat, the second grouping is on the second matra of the second beat, the third is on the third matra of the third beat, and the fourth grouping is on the fourth matra of the fourth beat. So the formula for playing any ratio is gati to jati. So 4 against 3 is Chatusha, or 4, jati 3. So 4 against 5 is Chatusha, jati 5. And this can be applied to any ratio. So now let's try another one, 5 against 3. So 5 subdivisions to the beat is Khanda, and 5 against 3 is Khanda, jati 3. So I'll count off 3 beats this time in Khanda, and then I'll move to jati 3. Takagina ton, takagina ton, takagina ton, takida, 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 tak, 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 tak. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ta, ka, gi, na, tone, ta, ka, gi, na, tone, ta, 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 takida, 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 takida. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ta, ka, gi, na, tone, ta. So now let's try a more difficult one, Tisha Jati 7, which gives us 3 against 7. This is a harder one because the space in between each note is much bigger, so it's even more important to feel that matra speed throughout. So again, the process is to establish the Tisha speed and then move to counting it in Mishra. So again, this will be 3 groupings that realign over a course of 7 beats. Takida, 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 takadimi, takida, takadimi, takida, takadimi, takida, takadimi, takida, takadimi, takida, takadimi, ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Ta, ki, da, ta, ki, da, ta. And I'll do one more, Mishra Jati 5. Now this one is difficult because using the Mishra Gati within it means that the matras are quite close together. So it's really important, again, as always, to really keep that feeling internalized. And this is going to last over 5 beats. So a 7 against 5 pattern. Takadimi takata takadimi takata takadimi takata takadimi takata takadimi takata takagina ton 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 ta 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 ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ta, ka, di, mi, ta, ki, ta, ka, di, mi, ta, ki, ta. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ta, ka, di, mi, ta, ki, da, ta, ka, di, mi, ta, ki, ta, ta. So again, this process can be applied to all of the gatis. And the first step is to practice each gati by applying each jati to it. Once you've become comfortable doing that on its own, then you can make it more interesting by practicing these polyrhythmic ratios against each other. And for that, you'll need a partner. So in these next examples, I'll be joined by Christopher Clausen. And in this first set, I'll keep counting the gati throughout while Chris rephrases using the jati. Once the cycle has ended, then Chris will continue with only the accents of the jati for another cycle, and then he'll continue with the accents, and I'll count only the beats without the gati subdivision, creating this polyrhythmic ratio. So I'm here with Christopher Clausen, who's going to help me do these gati-jati combinations against each other. So I'm going to be keeping the gati throughout while Christopher does the jati. So first, Tisha Jati 5. Takita, 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 takina, takina, takita, takika, takita, 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 taka, ki, na, da, tone, da, ka, ki, na, da, tone, da. Chatusha Jati 3.
taka dimmi, taka dimmi, taka dimmi, taka dimmi, taka dimmi, taka daki, taka dimmi, 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 taka ki de te mi ta ki de te mi ta ka ki de te mi ta.
Khanda Jati 7.
Taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka dimmi takira 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 taka
Gina ton taka
ka
ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka
na
gina ton taka gina
ton
ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka
ka
gina ton taka gina
ki
ton taka gina ton taka
na
gina ton taka
ton
taka gina ton
ta
ka
ka
di
ki
mi ka
na
ki
ton
te
ta
ka
ka
di
ki
mi ka
na
ki
ton
te
ta.
Misha Jati 4. 3, 4.
Taka dimmi takira taka dimmi takira taka dimmi takira taka dimmi takira taka dimmi 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 ta.
In this next set of examples, we'll be using the same gati but different jatis. And because we're using different jatis, each cycle will last a different number of beats. So to determine when the two jatis will realign together on the beat, you have to multiply each jati number together. And because we're using the same gati, some of the accents will align, just not on the beat until the whole cycle is done. So these internal alignments will occur after as many groupings as is the other jati. So in Chatusha Jati 3 versus Chatusha Jati 5, Jati 3 will align every 5 groupings, and Jati 5 will align every 3 groupings. So as you're practicing, just make note of when this should occur with your exercise so that you're sure that you're maintaining the correct tempo. So we'll begin by counting 4 beats in the gati and then move to the jati. When the whole cycle completes, we'll do just the accents, creating 2 polyrhythmic ratios against each other. So now we're going to perform the same gati with different jatis. So we'll start Chatusha Jati 3 versus Chatusha Jati 5. Which one would you like to take?
I take 3.
Okay, Christopher will do Chatusha Jati 3 and I will do Chatusha Jati 5. The metronome, please. So with Jati 3 and Jati 5, these are going to line up again after 15 beats. 3, 4.
Taka dimmi, taka dimmi, taka dimmi, taka dimmi, taka gina, 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 taka ka de mi ta
mi
de
ta
mi ta ka
di
mi
mi
ta ka
ta
de mi
ka
ta
di
ka de
mi
mi
ta.
ta.
Khanda Jati 3 versus Khanda Jati 4. 3 and
Taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka di taka daki taka di taka di taka daki taka di taka daki taka di taka di taka daki taka di taka di taka daki taka di ta ka
ki
na
na
ta
tone
ka
ta
ki
ka
na ton
ki
ta
na
ka ki
tone
na
ta
ton
ka
ta
ki
ka ki,
na,
na,
ton,
ton,
ta.
ta.
This next set will be using different gatis but the same jati, creating a polypulse. So these cycles will realign after as many beats as is the jati. So now we're going to perform different gatis with the same jati. So first we're going to start Tisha Jati 4, and I'll take Khanda Jati 4. So these are going to line up every 4 beats, but we'll be using different gatis within. 3, 4. Taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka dimi 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 taka ki na da ton ta ka ki na da ton ta. Chatusha Jati 3 versus Misha Jati 3. 3, 4. Takaga dimi, takaga dimi, takaga dimi, takaga dimi, takida, 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 taka, di, mi, ta, ka, di, mi, ta. And to complete the set, we'll do a different gati with a different jati. So creating a polyrhythm that gives the impression that each is going at a different tempo. So again, with the different jatis, you need to multiply the 2 jati numbers together to find out how many beats until they realign. So now we're going to do different gatis against different jatis. So first, Chatusha Jati 5. Yes? Yeah. Chatusha Jati 5 versus Khanda Jati 4. So this will line up every 20 beats. 3, 4. Taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina ton taka gina taka dimi 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 taka ka gi na ton
mi
ta ka
da
gi
ka
na ton
di
ta
mi
ka gi
da
na ton ta
di
ka gi
mi
na
da
ton ta
ka
ka gi na
mi
ton
ta.
ta. So Khanda Jati 3 versus Chatusha Jati 7. 3 and taka dimi, taka dimi, taka dimi, taka dimi, taka dimi, takida, taka dimi, takida, taka dimi, takida, taka dimi, taka dimi, takida, 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 ta
ka gi
ka
na ton ta
di
ka gi na ton
mi
ta ka
ta
gi na ton
ka
ta ka gi
di
na ton ta
mi
ka gi na
ta
ton ta
ka
ka gi na ton
di
ta ka gi
mi
na ton
ta. So to review, a jati is a regrouping of the gati. You keep the speed of the gati but rephrase it using the syllable of a different one. So taking the first syllable of each grouping of the cycle before the phrase realigns to the beat creates a ratio or polyrhythm. This ratio can be described as gati to jati. So Chatusha Jati 3 is 4 to 3. 3 to 7 is Tisha Jati 7. 5 against 4 is Khanda Jati 4, and etc. So the first thing to practice is each gati by applying each jati to it. So start by counting the gati, then rephrase with the syllables of the second gati, which is the jati. Pay attention to the jati matras and where they fall in relation to the gati to ensure that you're maintaining the correct speed throughout. Then only say the first syllable of each jati grouping to create the polyrhythmic ratio. And once these have been mastered, you can find a partner and practice performing polyrhythms and polypulses against each other. So first, one can maintain the gati, acting as a metronome, while the other does the jati. In the next exercise, you can both keep the same gati but different jatis. And with these, pay attention to where the matras line up with each other, which will be after as many groupings as is the other jati. And the number of beats of the whole cycle is equal to jati times jati. Next, the different gatis with the same jati. So this creates a polypulse, and the cycle will be as many beats as the jati number is. And finally, different gatis with different jatis, creating simultaneous polypulse and polyrhythm. And again, with the different jatis, the cycle will be as many beats as jati times jati. So I hope that this lesson has been informative. Using these techniques and really mastering each of the jatis makes performing polyrhythmic ratios much easier. And not only do you really start to feel the jati, but I feel that understanding the math behind it makes it incredibly easier. So having this under control is the first step to really being able to accurately perform complex polyrhythmic music. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I'll try to answer it for you. If you're interested in having more personalized lessons or a workshop for yourself or a group or for your own students, then please send me an email through my website, jasonalder.com. And thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for the next lesson.